brought to you by Brand South Africa.
What we're finding is that African governments are more willing these days and more open to discussing and getting suggestions and ideas to work together with private sector. So we play a facilitation role between government, private sector and civil society and the donor and development finance institutions as well. Everybody has a lot of projects in Africa because there's a large need, but we need to try and collate and get a cohesive approach on the implementation of these projects.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the key issues that have come out of some of the sessions that have been happening here. Now, we were talking earlier and you were telling me there are two huge big ones that have come up. There is the issue of course, of agriculture. And as I said, one of the two starting stats that have come across is that Africa imports most of its, not most of its food, but a huge chunk, $40 billion worth is one figure that I've been given. And the other issue is infrastructure.
That's right. Africa has huge amounts of land, and in fact Africa uses less than 10% of its arable land. And given the food security crisis that happened a few years ago globally, Africa's next biggest commodity is agriculture and land. And we're already seeing huge investors coming in to take opportunity of that. However, we need to ensure that Africans can feed themselves and regenerate their agriculture policies and investment policies to ensure that there is beneficiation processing of food into processed foods, etc., that can be used for export, but manage to retain some of that for Africans.
Yeah. Now, when you begin, of course, to talk about the issues of the stomachs, you know, the governments become very edgy because you're talking food security and you're talking national security and all those other things that may get them out of power. Are you finding a willingness among governments to engage the private sector and say, actually, perhaps private sector resources could well be the answer here?
Yes, we are. Under the World Economic Forum, an initiative called Grow Africa has emerged, and there are 7 African country governments with commitments from their heads of state to put forward investment plans to attract private sector investment to come in and commercialize a lot of the agriculture opportunities. Of course, what we're looking at in Africa, about 60 to 70% of all farming is done by smallholder farmers. Yeah. And so now the idea is, how do we convert those smallholder farmers into viable SMEs and businesses, and how do we link them into the commercial and large value chains like the retailers? Yeah. And that is the only way that we're going to effectively convert African agriculture to become commercially viable and to become an economic growth area for those countries.
Yeah. So 7 governments out of 54. That doesn't suggest there's a lot of buy-in.
Well, these are just the 7 initial ones. There is a larger continental program called CADIP, the Comprehensive Agriculture Advancement Development Program. Yeah. And under that, there are at least about 32 countries that have signed up for this process, a compact. And what happens is that the Nepad agency takes these governments through a process to redefine the agriculture strategy to attract investors, but also looking at policy reforms, also looking at what would be the key cash crop areas, and how do we integrate the farmers, the rural women who are predominantly the farmers in Africa, yeah, and private sector together.